guys! Today we'll be recapping the manhwa, How Did I Become the Princess? Please remember to like and subscribe if you enjoy the video, as it really helps our channel grow. Thanks. In a faraway land, the people of a mythical empire were plagued by demons for centuries. Until one day, a female warrior defeated the Demon King and ushered in an era of peace. Many nations bestowed her with treasure to express their gratitude, while the empire made her a noble and erected a statue in her honor. But the warrior did not live the rest of her life in luxury and peace as she deserved. She was poisoned by a noble of the Mara Heart Empire who didn't want her to join a neighboring country and fight for them instead. He even threatened to cut off her arms. Since the war was over, she had no reason to use her sword anymore, right? Wrong. She used it again that very day to slaughter the nobleman and every one of his guards. Exhausted and near death, the warrior sought the help of a dragon named Weinberg, who agreed to grant her a wish once she completed her mission of saving the world from the demons. She asked to go back in time to before she was a warrior, when she was just an innocent little girl. The dragon accepted, and she was sent back in time. Only nothing was how she remembered it. She ended up in the palace being escorted to meet the emperor. Both the Emperor Alexei von Marahart Ovyulia and the Prime Minister Dominic von Alberon are waiting for her inside. The warrior, now just a young girl, has no idea why she's here until Alexei stands from his seat declaring that she is the princess he lost 12 years ago. Wait, what? Just because they look kind of similar? Is that even possible? The servants bring forward a crystal ball which will check her ether. Those who share the same blood have similar ether, so if she touches the ball and a wintry pattern appears, they will know for sure that she is part of the Imperial Ovyulia family. Ether, by the way, is an intangible force that exists in the world. The Ovyulia family became the rulers of the empire because 1,000 years ago, their ancestor proved that he could use his special powers to manipulate ether, and thus founded an empire which still stands today. Hesitantly, the girl touches the crystal ball, and to her shock, it displays the same pattern as Alexei. At first, she thinks it's broken, but the emperor, her new father, is convinced. He picks her up at once, remarking that she looks just like the Empress. It's all a little awkward for the little warrior, who is now being held by a man she just met and called a princess. The emperor clears his schedule for the time being and asks for her name. Until now, she's never had one. As if that wasn't sad enough, she was also staying at a farmhouse where she was beaten and threatened. So she ran away and was found by a baron who brought her to the palace. She is then passed over to a group of adoring ladies who are delighted to finally meet her. They bathe and clothe her, analyzing her every feature and commenting on her weight, her height, her hair. It's a little overwhelming. When she sees her own reflection all dressed up in pink, she is even more flustered. A maid arrives to take her back to her father, the emperor. The staff have gone all out for her arrival and set up a giant spread of cakes and treats in the garden for their new princess. The emperor is happy to see her clean and, well, out of that rag she was wearing. He tells her that she did have a name when she lived with him, but he couldn't officially name her due to some mysterious circumstances. Although it's been 12 years, he'd still like to give her one and asks if it would be okay. The warrior-turned-princess has never had a name, even in the years that she fought for humanity and became a hero. The idea of having an identity, a name made just for her, is so exciting that she cracks the first smile since she arrived, and agrees. Her father said that while she was gone, he added another name for each year that they were apart. So technically, she's supposed to have 12 names. Even for a princess, that's a little extra, don't you think? The emperor eventually decided on 3 that he really loved. Nanael, Ibisela, Eurydice. Quite the mouthful. He couldn't have just gone with the classic Isabel or a good old Jane? No? Anyway, from now on, she'll be known as Nanael. That was the first name the Empress picked when she was pregnant, hoping her baby would be a girl. Nanael loves her new name so much that she starts crying. The moment the first tear falls, the emperor dismisses the staff and shields her from view. He wipes her eyes and says he doesn't want to share his daughter's tears with anyone else. Ordinarily, he would have let her cry it out and have a rest, but they have a lot more planned for the day. So they hop in a carriage where her father tells Nanael about her older brothers. She has 2 of them, quite a bit older than she is, and she'll meet them tomorrow. They then arrive at their destination, Arketa Palace, which is going to be her home from now on. A huge crowd of servants are waiting to greet them. His Majesty has been very selective in his hiring process. He's even handpicking the maids and tutors. Nanael has been assigned the largest chamber in the palace, which includes 15 different rooms. What's a 12-year-old going to do with all that space? The princess is thinking the same, a little overwhelmed by her father's attention and care. Seeing her discomfort, the emperor offers to knock all the walls down and turn it into one big room. Right, like that would make it better. The princess quickly refuses and assures her father that she's perfectly content with this chamber. At least she won't get bored. It'll take her a week just to explore her own bedroom. The Emperor then tours her around the rest of the palace, and after a long day of introductions, tucks her into bed. He kisses her on the forehead, leaving the little girl to wonder how she ended up here. Her heart is still racing, so she steps outside for a breath of fresh air. To her shock, there's a visitor waiting for her on the balcony. It's Weinberg, the golden dragon. And he's a lot bigger than before. Didn't he fit inside a tree trunk in her past life? He walks toward her, getting smaller with every step. In her past life, when she was about this age, Nanael was near death when the dragon came and offered her a contract which could save her, so long as she completed her mission. As we know, she grew up to become the fabled warrior and save the world, so she did as she was told. She wonders if the dragon came back to give her another task and quickly gets frustrated. When he calls her child, she yells back that she has a name now. A whole bunch of them, actually. Weinberg is impressed that she's already found her relatives, but he reminds her that their contract was made with ether that intertwines their souls. Nothing can break the bond between them, not even death. In other words, Nanael will always be his contracted knight of the 4 seasons, in her past life and in this one. Although that does come with an advantage, since it means she can use her old powers and summon the sword of the 4 seasons. Weinberg has no more missions or tasks for her to complete, but he used most of his powers to send her back in time, so now he's stuck in this weak form for the next century. And who better to stay with for protection than his very own contracted knight? Obviously, having a little golden dragon following her around would probably raise some questions, so Weinberg transforms into a cute little cat instead. The next morning, the head butler and head maid, Lucius and Mila, introduce themselves to the princess. Since they still don't have a maid or tutor just yet, they suggest she take a walk through the gardens. She takes Weinberg with her, communicating via ether so that the maid can't hear them talking. They're interrupted by the arrival of a carriage, carrying the 2 brothers she's heard literally nothing about. She can tell by their auras that both the boys have the talent to wield ether, which is incredibly rare. It's always the firstborn alone in the imperial family who is able to manipulate the force. That firstborn child, therefore, becomes the heir and is trained to rule one day. There's been no exception for the last 1,000 years. Until now, of course. The 2 princes, Aiden and Sergi, are actually twins, so the power to use ether is split between them. Apart from their faces, however, they're total opposites. Aiden is kind and friendly toward his baby sister, while Sergi is a little more rough around the edges. There's only a 5-year difference between them, but it feels a lot bigger than that. Especially when Sergi is acting like a jerk, ordering his little sis around and demanding she come sit next to him. Weinberg doesn't respond well to his attitude, but in his current form as a kitten, there's not a whole lot that he can do about it. Luckily, Nanael has enough spunk for them both and tells Sergi she doesn't want to. She argues back that unless he is a grandpa and can't see well, there's no reason for her to get any closer. Sergi loses his temper. He says she must not want to sit next to him because then he'll see how ugly she is. Is this guy her big brother or her bully? Seriously, what a douche. He starts toying with her hair, at which point Aiden steps in and knocks him back. But he keeps going, even grabbing her wrists and making fun of how thin she is. That's when Aiden really gets mad. He shoves his twin back and takes Nanael in his arms and tells Sergi firmly to control himself. I guess he can be pretty scary because the older brother backs off after that. He gives her a pretty pathetic excuse for an apology, but things are still kind of icy between them until he leaves. Sergi, however, doesn't seem bothered by his sister's dislike. He actually finds it funny. I mean, she basically kicked the heir to the imperial throne out of her palace, and she only got here yesterday. That night, the princess has trouble sleeping. She can't help but replay the memory from her past life, the only time she met the Emperor. Back then, she was the warrior, and she had no idea that he was really her father. It's a shame he didn't recognize her back then the way he did in this life, but she did look very different in those days. Scars covered her face and body, distorted by the poison of monsters she defeated in battle. She wonders if he still would have accepted her, even with her scarring. Weinberg reassures her that he doesn't seem like the kind of father to toss away a child just because of their appearance. Then he gets mad, asking if she's thinking this because of what Sergi said earlier about her being ugly. He even offers to take a bite out of him for her. Of course, just because Nanael looks young doesn't mean she's so easily bruised. Then, almost like he knew she couldn't sleep, her father walks in. Maybe he did know, using his ether senses. He spent the whole day selecting her personal staff, so starting tomorrow, she's going to be pretty busy. The person he had in mind for her tutor wasn't available, so he's hired a temporary replacement until she can step in. Who is this mysterious madam that the Emperor favors so highly? Well, we won't find out for a while yet. The temporary tutor is Miss Viola Mary, a former Marquise's wife. She's a little harsh and has lots to say about Nanael's speech and manners. Has everyone forgotten that she literally lived on the streets for 12 years? Of course she doesn't act like a princess. Cut her some slack. Weinberg takes an instant disliking to her for the same reason. Nanael thinks he's being sensitive, but she knows better than to take his opinion for granted. After Viola has disappeared, the butler announces that the first prince has come to visit his sister. After what he said to her last time, the princess is in no mood to entertain, so she tells the butler to inform him that her schedule is full today, which is basically the royal way of saying get lost. The first class with Viola is soon underway. The first task of the day is to fix her posture, so the tutor places a book on her head and asks her to walk without dropping it. Then they fix her sitting position, which apparently requires literally strapping her to a chair. It's incredibly uncomfortable and impossible to maintain. Nanael finally agrees with Weinberg that Miss Viola isn't a good match, but she bears the pain through the lesson, hoping that her intentions are kinder than her attitude. When their teaching is finally done, Nanael is shocked to find her brothers waiting outside her chamber. They've been there since the morning! Exhausted from her etiquette lesson, the princess decides to ignore them, just for one more day. Besides, she's still got one more introduction to do, because her father has finally found her a lady-in-waiting, a young girl named Regina Hayes. Regina comforts her about the difficulty of etiquette lessons and tucks her up into bed with a nice warm cup of milk. But just as she's about to go to sleep, there's a knock on the door. It's mean Miss Viola, but why is she here at this hour? Actually, she's come to apologize for her harsh manner. Well, it's about time. Viola admits that she was a close friend of the late Empress, Nanael's mother. After her husband passed away and then her friend, she became lonely and perhaps a little cruel. From now on, she promises to think of the princess as her real daughter and gives her a kiss goodnight before leaving her be. Now, I don't know about you guys, but I'm still getting super bad vibes from that lady. And so is Weinberg. And that's how you know something's up. Also, her brothers are still waiting outside. Night has long fallen and Sergi won't give up, though he's clearly made himself comfortable. And poor Aiden has been dragged along to explain what he did wrong in the first place. How is this guy in line for the throne? Meanwhile, Weinberg has taken a little trip to visit one of his other prodigies, Lich, who seems pretty gruesome. Remind me why he chose a 12-year-old to protect him? This guy seems pretty capable. Actually, it kind of seems like Lich is the one that sent him to Nanael. He clearly intends to visit her soon, but some kind of revenge mission is keeping him occupied. Back at the palace, morning has arrived, which means it's back to etiquette lessons for the princess. I don't know if he stayed the night or what, but Sergi is still outside. He was definitely there until at least dawn. Miss Viola is still being sly, but Nanael is resolved to give her a proper chance before asking her father to get her a new tutor. But something is definitely up. When she drops the book, she bends down to pick it up and Regina rushes over to take it for her, asking the princess to leave lowly tasks to her maid. It really seems like they're hiding something. Does Regina know something we don't? After etiquette lessons, the butler announces that Sergi is still outside and desperate to see her. He's done his time now, so Nanael agrees to meet him. The butler opens the door halfway, letting the princess hear how urgently her brother has been pleading to meet her. When she appears, he stumbles back in shock and starts rambling a crazy apology that seems more nervous than genuine. But he does say he won't bully her anymore, so Nanael invites him inside for some food. She's not particularly impressed with his behavior, and her mood worsens even further when Viola uses their dinner as an opportunity to continue her teaching. She goes on and on about the way she holds her fork, using backhanded compliments to make her feel small and constantly correcting her position. But Sergi's not the type to sit by and watch. He throws his plate like a child having a tantrum and tells her to postpone the class. And when she refuses, he gets up and walks right over to her, blatantly admitting that her teaching style is problematic. He points out that if his father were here instead of him, she would never have dared to say the things she's been telling his little sister, and he takes that as a personal insult, an assumption that he would let her cruelty slide. Uh-oh, she's really done it now. Viola's dignity crumbles in front of the first prince. She bows immediately, begging for forgiveness, and scurries away at once. He might be crass, but Sergi sure is good at the protective big brother role. There's no way he would have let his baby sis be bullied like that. He adjusts her position to make her more comfortable and shows her how to eat more practically. Nanael cuts off his impromptu dining lesson and reminds him of the real reason he came here, to give her an apology. At once, Sergi gets on his knees and gives her a proper apology. He even offers to swear on oath if she wants it. Since he's kind of cute and clearly very earnest, Nanael decides to forgive him, but she won't forget. Not while they still don't know each other that well. And she warns him that if she decides that he was intentionally being mean when they first met, she won't ever look at or talk to him again. That's it, girl! Really make him work for it! Her afternoon classes are canceled that day. Apparently, after her run-in with Sergi, Viola has fallen ill. Regina even saw her crying. Did he really scare her that much? Nanael is struggling to uncover her tutor's motive. If she was just trying to get closer to the imperial family, wouldn't she have been more careful? The princess decides to investigate further and goes to apologize to her tutor in person for what happened at lunch. Viola is really laying it on thick. She won't even get out of bed. Nanael asks her about a term she heard Sergi use during their argument, half-freak. Viola, who is clearly glad she asked, explains that the twins are sometimes cruelly referred to as half-freaks because of their ether being split. It's not actually been proven that way because they can't use their full powers, but lots of people, including Viola it seems, believe that their eyes are proof enough. This is like the last piece of the puzzle for Nanael, who now knows Viola's true intentions. She wants to replace her mother. By eliminating the half-powerful twins and becoming close to this promising young princess, she wanted to marry the emperor and end up at the top of the entire empire. Talk about delusion, as if that was ever going to happen. And if that wasn't bad enough, it seems someone has been putting something in her milk. Unsurprisingly, Miss Viola is also ill again the next day, which means all Nanael's classes are canceled. But that doesn't mean she's free to play the day away. The sudden arrival of a carriage brings with it the man in charge of the palace, Count Rondinel. He was ordered by the emperor to visit the princess and has brought a mysterious object covered with a large cloth. On the emperor's orders, he cannot reveal the contents in public, so for now, it will remain a secret. But he also brought a large golden key, which he hands over to the princess. With no explanation as to what it's for, it's kind of useless at the moment. Her father has also sent about 1,000 dresses to try on, so really, it's a good thing Viola pretended to be sick. A surprise visit from Alexei and Aiden cheers her up and gives her a break from all the maids and dress fittings. To her surprise, Sergi is absent. He received an urgent mission this morning, so he'll be gone for a while. But he asked Aiden to visit and play with her every day while he's away. Aiden also assures her that he's not in any danger, so there's no need to worry. When she asks her father about the key given to her by the Count, he asks Aiden to leave the room. He says it's a special gift made just for her, so only the owner can see it. Nanael's curiosity is now piqued. He takes her to the door. When she puts in her key and turns it, she enters a room with a mysterious covered object. Finally, she is allowed to pull off the cover, revealing a beautiful miniature version of Arquetta Palace. It's meant to be a dollhouse, but it's bigger than the princess herself. You could probably fit 3 of her in that thing. Although, it's not just a toy. The palace contains 2 secret passageways, and the dollhouse includes them, so she can learn her way around the palace while she plays. There are also hidden gifts in different parts of the dollhouse, including a little brooch that once belonged to her mother. The emperor then asks about Viola and how their lessons have been going. It would be so easy to tell him the truth right now and get Viola kicked out of the palace. But since she's a noble, there would be lots of questions, and Nanael doesn't want to get her father in any trouble with the aristocracy. So she decides to keep going with Viola for now, at least until her permanent teacher, the Duke of Vixen, arrives. Even when Aiden is leaving, she is hesitant to admit that Viola has been a bad teacher, like her brother suspects. Nanael has a bigger plan in mind anyway. From her past life, she has plenty of experience gathering information, which is what she'll need if she wants to beat her tutor. Before she became the warrior, she took on lots of dangerous jobs and was often taken advantage of because she couldn't read the contracts she accepted. That was when she met a certain someone with green eyes and dark hair. Someone we've seen once before. After Weinberg taught her the basics of reading, she took on a job in the woods, following a torn piece of parchment with the details of her latest quest. The boy, who she saved from a burning mansion, continued to follow her silently through the woods and ended up becoming a companion of sorts. But Nanael didn't want the responsibility, so she wanted to get rid of him. Just as she was hoping to shake him, the boy proved himself useful by helping her read her quest. Thanks to him, they made it to the injured villagers before anything worse could happen, and the boy asked to stay by her side from then on. I don't know why he wants permission now, considering he never asked before, but in exchange, he offered to teach her how to read and write. Back in the present, the princess is thankful that he did, but Weinberg tells her that Lich, his other protege who looks suspiciously like her old companion, revealed that in his timeline, he read that the twin sons of Emperor Alexei were murdered by some scheming nobles. Wait, what? So Lich was her companion in her past life but is also alive in the future? And why is Weinberg telling her that her brothers are in danger? She's only 12. But it does explain some things. Nanael didn't know the princess had brothers when she first arrived, because they died before Lich was born, when she was still training her powers. Great, so now she has to find a sneaky way to get rid of Viola and to save her brothers? As if that wasn't enough, she returns to her chamber to find Regina waiting with her usual cup of milk. It's getting sweeter, which means she's definitely still adding something, but whether it's cinnamon or poison, she still can't tell. If you ask me, she shouldn't be drinking it. Actually, if you ask me, she should have fired all the suspicious people a long time ago. Anyway, Regina also dropped a piece of ribbon and makes the excuse that the maids must have left it behind. Toying with her, Nanael tells her to keep it as a gift, making her feel guilty for lying so obviously. She gives her even more gifts, really rubbing it in. Then she decides to gift her mother's old brooch to Viola. What is she doing? A few days later, Viola finally emerges from her bedroom and comes looking for the princess to restart their etiquette lessons. But as the head maid informs her, Nanael left the palace early that morning and will only return in the afternoon. The maid is very sneaky, reassuring Viola that she should take as much rest as possible since she was too ill to perform her duties and has only just recovered. It's very sly, but the tutor knows she's being insulted. She gestures subtly to the brooch from the late Empress, explaining that the princess treats her very well because she thinks of Viola as a mother. Seriously? How deluded can you be? The head maid is clearly very displeased to see her wearing it and even implies that she might have stolen it. Insulted, Viola storms back upstairs. Meanwhile, Nanael and Aiden are having lunch at the main palace as an excuse to avoid her lessons. I mean, technically she still is studying. As Aiden points out, she is using appropriate table manners after all. He assures her that she's doing well. So long as she gives Viola no sign of suspicion, everything will go according to plan. She bids Aiden goodbye, asking him to come back to the Arcata Palace with her father whenever she gives him a sign. The second she's back inside, Viola is right over her shoulder, saying how disappointed she is that the princess has been skipping her morning classes. For once, Nanael lets her mask slip and argues back, but she smooths it over by telling Viola that if she's ever impolite, it's only because her tutor feels so much like her mother that she forgets to be respectful. Right. She offers to retake her morning classes now. Regina is about to get a book for her posture lessons, but Nanael wants to use the one she got from her brother. For some reason, that makes Regina start to sweat. Viola offers her an excuse, claiming that book is too heavy and might hurt her head. How stupid do they think she is? They've basically just proven that the book has been tampered with. Are they working together to ruin her royal training? After taking a good look at the book and proving her suspicions, Nanael declares that she has a headache and the lesson is over. As usual, Viola makes her feel bad about it, but ends up agreeing. Back in her bedroom, Nanael tells Weinberg that she has sent the sign to Aiden. Finally, she's decided to strike back at the two villains in her palace. One way or another, Regina and Viola will face the consequences of their actions. The Emperor soon comes striding into the palace with his son in tow. Once he heard that his daughter had a headache, he came at once. But it seems like they both came because they genuinely thought she was ill, so that signal didn't work the way she was expecting. Her father makes a comment about the maid and tutor not knowing she was ill until it was too late, which makes Regina nervous. Viola is composed as always, which only makes Nanael more determined to push back. She tells her father that she's working so hard on etiquette classes and asks him to take a look at her posture when she walks. At this point, Regina is shaking. She tries to bring a different book, but the princess demands the usual one, so that her father can see it's been tampered with. Reluctantly, Regina brings the book and tries to place it on her head. Aiden notices her shaking hands and tells the tutor to do it instead. Viola doesn't flinch. She places the book on her head and watches as she drops it over and over again. Nanael continues to act innocent, but after a while, Aiden is suspicious. He saw her do it perfectly earlier that day, though that was a different book, of course. He insinuates that the book might be the problem, so Nanael asks to try again with a different one. Her father and brother watch closely as Viola places the book atop her head. The princess walks steadily and gives them a perfect curtsy. The Emperor inspects the book, and his face turns dark. He throws the book at the girls, narrowly missing Regina, who screams. He accuses her at first, but even the Emperor knows a maid couldn't have done something like this on her own. That's when Viola drops to her knees and tells him she's been framed. But any chance she had at redemption is over when he spots his late wife's brooch on her dress. He rips it off, ignoring Viola's desperate pleas that it was a gift. He asks his daughter for the truth, and she makes it seem like the brooch went missing earlier this week. Oh, she's sneaky. I like her style. Obviously, the Emperor believes his daughter, even when Regina swears the tutor is telling the truth. The maid confirms that Nanael reported the brooch missing about 1 week ago, exactly when Viola claims she was given it. The princess plays an impressive innocent act and tries to convince her father that it's her fault for not telling him about the brooch sooner. He assures her that no member of the imperial family is ever in the wrong. The fault is with the criminals behind them. Yikes! I guess he won't be showing them any mercy. The Emperor turns to his son for their punishment, and sweet little Aiden suggests cutting off their hands, and says it with a smile, too. In the end, Regina blamed Viola for everything. She was expelled from the palace, and Viola had her title removed, forcing her to live a life worse than a commoner's. The next morning, Nanael is enjoying her new free time when Sergi storms into her room. He was away for almost a month in the end, but he heard all about the situation with Viola and Regina. He starts blabbing about his mission with the Duke, but the princess cuts him off when she feels her father's ether enter the palace. They run downstairs to find her father, who is accompanied by yet another familiar-looking stranger. Does Lich have a sister? This is Duchess Vixen, the tutor that the Emperor wanted in the first place, and the only person he trusts with his daughter's studies. The Duchess introduces herself as Stella Lizzie Elene von Vixen, catching the attention of even Weinberg. Despite having only just seen her, Weinberg seems to think she's trustworthy, at least more than that nasty lady Viola. And she certainly has her priorities straight. She's more interested in teaching Nanael how to read than how to carry books atop her head. Her new studies will consist of poetry, history, writing, and dance in the afternoons, though Stella makes a point to tell the princess she doesn't have to study anything she dislikes. As it turns out, the Duchess used to be the Emperor's guard until she was Sergi's swordsmanship teacher for a while. Her real skills are with swords, not books. As such, the adults offer her the chance to replace dance with swordsmanship lessons. Little do they know that this was once the most famous warrior in the Empire. She's had enough fighting for a lifetime, literally. Instead, she picks horseback riding. Just then, Regina enters the room to deliver a cup of tea, shocking the Emperor, who ordered her to leave the palace. Nanael, however, asked her to stay. She wanted a lovely cup of milk one last time, which is obviously just a way of ensuring Regina finally gets outed for slipping something in her drink. Stella, who just so happens to have a poison tester on her, senses something strange in the tea and searches through Regina's belongings. She returns with a vial of liquid, and when she pours it on the tester, it turns black. Oh, she's really done it now. Regina pretends she's never seen the vial before, so the Emperor sends for one of his guards to help clear things up. He orders her to be locked up and tortured until they can get the truth out of her. She is dragged away, kicking and screaming, making some crazy claims about her being a princess of the imperial family too. Okay, sweetie, keep dreaming. Nanael also noticed that she didn't have any of the presents she gave in her possession, which means she was probably selling them outside the palace. Because it would have been hard for a mere maid to smuggle in poison and smuggle out expensive gifts, that makes it even more likely that she was working with Viola. Luckily, the ether in the princess's body detoxifies poisons, which is why she wasn't scared to keep drinking the milk. But it still doesn't make sense. What would Regina have to gain from the princess's death? What was her real motive? The Emperor promises to investigate further and orders a troop of knights to surround the Arcata Palace, moving his daughter to the main palace for the time being. Later, the Emperor is given a full report of Regina's torture. She confessed to poisoning the milk, but the poison would only have decreased her immunity and didn't pose any great threat to her life. Honestly, that's even more strange. Anyway, Nanael gets to sleep beside her father while she's staying at his palace, so I'd say her plan worked out pretty well. The next morning, Nanael is invited to have breakfast with her father from now on. It might not seem like a big deal, but her brother said that joining the Emperor for breakfast is like being officially introduced as a member of the royal family. Duchess Vixen can tell that she's nervous and reminds Nanael that she's the princess of a great empire. She can make as many mistakes as she wants. It turns out breakfast with the Emperor is quite the affair. Pretty much every state official is present and watching closely for any slip-up from their new princess. The Emperor formally introduces her to the officials, who bow and greet her as a true royal. Nanael plays her part perfectly, but when the food arrives, no one touches it. They just keep staring at her. The Emperor warns them to stop making her uncomfortable, but it's just because she looks so much like the Emperor. The princes, on the other hand, are being talked about by everyone. The princess can hear people critiquing their behavior and calling them half-eat princes because of their eyes, so she purposefully breaks a glass, drawing the attention back to herself and giving Sergi a warning look. The conversation then moves on to Nanael's unfortunate incident with her tutor and maid. They put a lot of pressure on the Emperor to prioritize her safety, so he announces that he plans to appoint 2 guardian knights to the princess. It's a bit excessive, even for a princess. She tries to convince her father that just 1 is fine, and after a very long conversation, he agrees. They then discuss the princess's upcoming birthday. The Emperor is already planning a huge feast in which he plans to bestow the official title of princess to her. Because she's been on her own for so long, Nanael didn't even know she had a birthday. As soon as she's back with Weinberg, he announces that Lich has completed his mission. It's only been 2 years since he was tasked with the capture of the Demon King, so that's pretty fast. Weinberg and Nanael travel together to his secret lair, where Lich comes to greet them. It's strange for Nanael to see him fully grown, while she looks like a child. Even so, he kneels and kisses her hand. The princess is a little taken aback and gets even more embarrassed when he makes a big deal of reintroducing himself formally. He has suffered a lot because of her. By turning back time, she has placed them both in a world 8 years before he was born. His family, his name, his status, everything is lost. But Lich doesn't mind. In fact, he chose to stay behind so that he could see her again in this world. Lich asks for her name since he never heard it in her past life. She gives it to him and he asks for permission to use it with the most charming smile she's ever seen. I know he's one of the good guys, but is anyone else starting to think Lich is a bit of a creep? She thanks him for passing on the information she needed to get rid of Viola. It turns out it was her who conspired to kill them in the past, so by getting her out of the palace, she has also saved their lives. As thanks, she offers him a huge pile of gems and jewels from the palace. He takes them and overhears them talking about Nanael's birthday. Of course, he wants to prepare a present of his own, because clearly, he's obsessed with her. Weinberg, on the other hand, has an entire cave of wonders for her to choose from. He tells her to pick anything she wants, and she ends up choosing a beautiful box filled with cookies? They might not be very fancy, but they do look delicious. A week later, Nanael has been appointed a new maid named Lena Maria Alice, who already seems better than Regina. Not like it's hard. Her lessons with Duchess Vixen have also started. So far, she is learning about the continent's culture and economy, with an emphasis on the role of mercenary guilds in the Empire. Nanael herself was part of one in her past life and got such a high score on her mercenary rating that they had to make a new category just for her. While she was away with Weinberg, the Emperor had a music room prepared for her lessons, a tea party room, and even an exhibition hall. Talk about going overboard! In addition to all the rest, there's one final room that she is only allowed to see once. It's the room appointed for her guardian knight, once she has chosen one. Ideally, she would probably choose Lich, but when she turned back time, his noble heritage was swept away, so now he's a commoner. If he wants to become any kind of knight, he'll have to start from the bottom to prove himself. At least for the time being, she will have to choose a guard with the help of her father. And he's really gone all out. The selection of the guard will be held tomorrow so that she has a royal knight in time for her birthday banquet. Since it will be her formal introduction to the nobles of society, she needs to have one for the sake of their family reputation. So the next morning after breakfast, Nanael joins her father in visiting the drill hall. The boys tag along too, as does Duchess Vixen, so that she can help identify good and bad technique. The night drill hall is actually a lot fancier than you might expect. It could easily be confused for a room in the Arquetta Palace. There's even a luxurious box for the royal family to watch the proceedings from. This is basically like a concert for them. All this luxury is for the North Node Knights, who belong to the imperial family of Ovyulia. Both the North and South Node Knights are highly regarded, but those in the North Node building are considered elite. They're under the immediate control of the imperial family, which is why a royal knight is usually selected from among them. There are also lots of benefits given to those who are loyal for a long time, so the competition to become Nanael's personal guard will be fierce. With a nod from the Emperor, the ceremony begins. The Alpha Knights appear first, in white uniforms that prove their status as the Royal Emperor's bodyguards. Next are the Castor Knights for Sergi in dark blue, and Poulot Knights for Aiden in red, and a group of guards in gray who are going to be assigned to the princess. As part of the ceremony, Nanael is given a sword and asked to make a pledge to the gathered knights. This is where she really shines. All the guards can see the remnants of the Knight of the Four Seasons in her power and confidence when she speaks. She summons the Grey Guards, who introduce themselves one by one and pledge their lives to the princess. In return, she raises her sword and names them Enteres, her own personal sect of knights. Now that the starting ceremony is completed, the real competition can begin. The Duchess Vixen is surprised that a 12-year-old girl can lift a sword so comfortably, almost like she's done it before. The Duchess explains that the position of personal knight will go to the winner of the competition, who will then swear a unique oath directly to the princess. Apparently, the ranking battles held between the North and South Node Knights had a particularly skilled young knight who won first place. He was originally a South Node Knight who had only recently joined the force. It came as a big surprise that he won, not only because of how new he was, but because South Node Knights can't wield aura, the way some of the North Node Knights can. Those who use aura in battle are leagues ahead of those who can't, so it's extra impressive that a South Node Knight managed to beat even those skilled fighters. Duke Muayan, who is in charge of the North Node Knights, is actually the father of that special knight. He must be especially pleased that his son is competing here today. It turns out all the North Node Knights already had a preliminary round to determine a final 8 contestants. And right beneath them is that very knight, the son of Duke Moayan. He seems strangely familiar to Nanael, and she wonders if she met him in her past life. If they did, it doesn't seem like they had a good relationship. That's what her gut feeling says anyway. She makes a flyaway comment about how he's quite handsome, which stuns her brothers and father into silence. Oh well, there go his chances. Nanael quickly assures her father that she has no interest in the knight, while Aiden struggles to keep Sergi under control. Really, these guys. Even from up in the balcony, Nanael can see his ether is very special. He's using it to surround his sword at this very moment, something that only very talented knights are able to do. Sergi and Aiden are also impressed by the young knight, whose name is Ferdinand. But he's up against a member of the first prince's personal squad, the Caster Knights. So this first fight is sure to be a good one. The battle starts right away. Ferdinand is ferocious right off the bat. Although the handling of his ether is still a little clumsy, his skills and intuition are unmatched. He defeats the senior knight in a matter of minutes and moves on to the next round. As the final round draws closer, Nanael starts to get excited. Once she has an escort knight, she'll be able to leave the palace and even learn horseback riding. But that raises another question in her mind. If royals are so heavily guarded and sheltered from the world, then how did she get lost in the first place? Especially since her father is so protective, it's a little strange. While she's pondering her own origin story, the boys are discussing their next bet. The next round is between Ferdinand and Sir Wendenel, an accomplished knight. Aiden asks Nanael for advice on who he should pick, but since the boys keep accusing her of liking the Duke's son, she deflects the question to the Duchess, who also picks Ferdinand. Of course, her father is also a talented swordsman with the ability to control and see ether. So she asks him as well, but he doesn't have an answer. It seems he's still hung up on how she lifted the sword during the opening ceremony. Oops, you really blew your cover on that one, Nanael. She explains that she already practiced lifting it earlier, but her father tells her not to strain herself in future. It seems like he wants her to say more, but the final round has just begun. While Ferdinand and Sir Wendenel are trading blows, he assures her that both men are more than capable of protecting the princess, so she should be happy with either one. Sir Wendenel's sword is cast to the ground, and with that, the winner is decided. Duke Moayan looks very proud to ask her to begin the oath. Nanael moves to the top of the stairs and invites Ferdinand to come before her and make his vow. As he walks, Ferdinand swears loyalty and respect to the Ovyulia family and accepts any mission thrown his way, promising never to accept defeat. With every step and word, Nanael gets a stronger and stronger sense of familiarity and suspicion. But her father told her not to worry, and he's always by far the most protective when it comes to her. So she lifts her sword and swears him to her side, asking for his name. As he raises his head, she gets a chill down her spine. How could she possibly have forgotten those eyes? There's no doubt about it, she's definitely met this man before. The next morning, the maids take extra care with Nanael's makeup and outfit, dolling her up like a true princess. But she can't relax knowing that Ferdinand is standing right outside the door. Sensing her discomfort, Weinberg asks what their connection was in her past life and why she feels so weird. Even Nanael isn't totally sure. He didn't really do anything to her, and they hardly ever spoke. Actually, the only reason she knows him is because she tried to become a knight before, in her past life. As a commoner, it was nearly impossible to become a knight, so she entered the military tournament for commoners that Lich himself is currently hoping to win. The victor earns a higher status, and if they can endure the training stages, they will even be offered a noble title. Nanael did win the competition, but during the training stages, she was bullied mercilessly. At first, they only talked behind her back, but when she didn't react, it got worse. They filled her room with garbage and rotting food. Then they released rats and bugs on her bed and tore her clothes to shreds. One day, when she turned up to training, they approached her and ripped off her hood, revealing that she was actually a girl. Obviously, that made everything 10 times worse. Because aren't things always 10 times worse when you're a girl? The drill sergeant arrived just before they started beating her. He seemed unimpressed, but the bullies made the excuse that they were just teaching the commoner some proper manners. It was a pathetic excuse. Even a child could see through it. But the Marquis in charge of their training that day didn't care. He just told them to clean up and be ready in an hour. And that Marquis was none other than Ferdinand, though he had a different name at the time. Nanael was shocked. People always ignored her pitiful situation when she was a child, but this was different. They were training to become knights, true nobles who hold honor above all else. How could a Marquis just ignore their awful behavior? That day, Nanael decided she had no interest in becoming a knight. Not a royal one, anyway. Back in the present, however, it puts her in a difficult situation. This is years before that incident took place, so maybe Ferdinand isn't yet that kind of person, but it's difficult not to keep hold of her judgments, especially when it's such a pivotal moment in her past. The man of the hour enters the room, bearing a gift from Sergi. Nanael forgot to tell him what she wanted for her birthday, so I guess he went out on his own and bought something. I hope it's not anything crazy. The gift is, in fact, a little bit crazy. Sergi has bought her a wig. The hair color is exactly like Nanael's, blonde fading into pink, but it's longer, like real princess hair. It must have been custom made, but is her short hair really so bad? I think it's cute. Nanael gives the wig a test drive when her birthday banquet arrives. Before it starts, Aiden and his little sister are chatting in a waiting room, where he thanks her for returning to their family and tells her how happy she has made them. He also thinks the long hair looks great, but Nanael isn't so sure. He apologizes, claiming that if he knew what Sergi was planning, he would have stopped him. He seems to think that she kept her hair short as a choice, when the truth is that the farmers cut it every month against her will. Before she can explain that to him, Sergi appears and comments on how cute the hair looks on their baby sister. Sergi is also training Ferdinand as her escort knight at the moment. The two boys have been friends since they were young, as the Duke Moayan helped establish the Empire and has been in charge of the North Node Knights for generations. So their family are very close to the Imperial family. It's common for the Moayans to become royal knights, and then resign the post when it's time for them to lead the Node Knights. On average, they stay as escort knights for about 3 years before taking up the role. Although it would be a hassle to pick another knight, at least that means Nanael doesn't need to worry about him becoming that cold and cruel marquise from her past life. Just then, Ferdinand interrupts their conversation to hint that he intends to remain the princess's escort for quite some time. It seems he likes the position more than he expected. Is that because he wants to protect her, or because he has an ulterior motive? When the Emperor arrives, they toast to the princess's health and long life, commencing the festivities with a kind of outdoor picnic spread all across the grounds. Her father planned it especially so that she could relax after all the craziness of her first few weeks. Then it's time for the first activity, where everyone at the party presents gifts to the princess to try and win her affection. There are countless gemstones, paintings, and even a pair of rare ivory tusks. The ivory is supposedly from Alteon elephants, the largest and rarest species in the world. But the tusks don't look very long comparatively. Nanael asks the Baron who gave the gift if these tusks came from a female, and he says she's correct. To the nobles, it looks like the princess is just very clever, but actually, in her past life, Nanael was ordered to steal the exact same pair of tusks, not knowing it was a family heirloom of the Baron's household. She knows how much this means to their family, so to give it up to the princess is an incredible act of generosity. The Emperor decides to reward the Baron with a huge territory and a new title of Count as thanks. It really pays to spoil the princess in this country. Aiden is one of the last to give his gifts, a purebred Ceres Luna horse, which is perfectly white. Nanael absolutely loves it, especially since she'll be learning to ride horseback soon. Finally, her father gives her a tiara that can only be worn by royal descendants, as well as an entire parade of presents for her to choose from. It seems like he's trying to make up for all the birthdays they missed out on together, but that does make me wonder, how did she get separated in the first place? We still haven't heard the story. When Nanael is enjoying her celebrations, Weinberg takes a trip to visit his other adopted child, Lich. He's been preparing long and hard for the Harvest Tournament so that he could become an official knight, but it ended up being canceled. That sets his plans back by an entire year, but he's still determined to make it to her side. He doesn't seem to like the idea of someone else protecting the princess and asks Weinberg what kind of man is currently guarding her. He recognizes Ferdinand by name, though just like Nanael, he had a different surname in their past lives. Lich hates him for a very different reason, because he was constantly compared to the Marquise and told he would never live up to his talents. After hearing that the princess also had a bad feeling about him, Lich can't sit back and let things play out. Though he won't reveal what he plans to do, he asks Weinberg to hand his birthday gift over to Nanael. And speaking of the birthday girl, she is currently chatting with her father while the rest of the nobles dance the evening away. As always, her brothers can't keep away for long, especially Sergi, who has come to gloat about how pretty her new hair is. He was surprised to find a wig with such a similar color to her own hair, but Nanael explains that it probably is her actual hair. Since the farmhouse couple cut her hair off when she was young, it's likely that they sold it and that's how it ended up as a wig. Her family become very quiet after that. They still haven't heard the full story of how she's been treated after all these years. As a matter of fact, neither have we. Sergi, as usual, flies off the handle, infuriated and confused by her suggestion. Aiden calms him down and approaches Nanael. He hadn't intended to ask about her past in case it was too painful to talk about. The Emperor felt the same, but the princess assures them that she's happy to talk so they can ask whatever they like. So they ask for the full story about her hair, and she explains that the couple who took her in really took a liking to her hair. When it grew a certain length, they started to cut it, hoping to earn extra money by selling it to a wig business. She never thought much about it, but it's kind of poetic that it's ended up back on her head. Even after the party has finished, Aiden and Sergi look dismayed and clearly feel guilty that she had such a hard time while they were apart. The only person who doesn't seem bothered is Nanael herself. That night, Weinberg hands over the present from Lich, which turns out to be a bunch of beautiful pink flowers wrapped in a fancy green ribbon. It's simple but thoughtful, and Nanael really likes it. She even wraps the ribbon around her wrist that night. Little does she know, her father is cursing himself in his study. He thought the best way to help Nanael heal from her past was just to ignore it and let her adjust to her new, comfortable life as a princess. But now he realizes that's no better than denial. Determined to make things right with his daughter, he summons Dominic, his chancellor, at once. By the morning, Dominic has traced all transactions concerning the wig and discovered the farmhouse where Nanael spent the past few years. It was an illegal residential area which doesn't officially exist. No wonder her adopted parents were so shady. Dominic found out plenty about them as well. Nor and Odira Hiddle adopted Nanael from an orphanage when she was about 3 years old. They owned the largest plot of land in Bluewell, the residential area, and acted like they owned the place. They treated Nanael as a slave, giving her only one set of clothes and forcing her to work for her meals. The Emperor's face is set like stone. He orders for the Hiddle family to be brought to the palace at once, but Dominic reveals that they passed away just recently. About 10 days ago, a herd of magical creatures attacked the town and killed the entire family. Yikes! However, there are still some Bluewell residents alive who are suspected of deliberately hiding the princess's whereabouts and will thus be brought to the palace. I don't even want to know what the Emperor has planned for them. What he doesn't know is that the herd of magical animals were accompanied by Lich, who came to seek revenge on the family who treated the Knight of the Four Seasons so cruelly. He repaid their cruelty in spades, practically inviting the beasts into their home after revealing that the girl they mistreated was actually the princess of the Marahart Empire. Talk about adding insult to injury. Of course, the princess is unaware of all of this and continues to pass the time with her bodyguard. She soon starts riding lessons, accompanied by Ferdinand, who has now become the Marquis Scarlich that she remembers from her past life. He was gifted with a very noble title and lots of land. She's much more comfortable around him these days since they've spent a lot of time together. The Emperor has finally given her permission to explore all the grounds with the horse Aiden gave her, who has been named Chrissy. Just in case, the Duchess Vixen and Sir Scarlich will follow from a short distance behind. And it's a good thing they are. As soon as Nanael grabs the reins, Chrissy bolts into a flat-out sprint, going too fast to control. But it's also fun. She enjoys the freedom of flying across the grounds at top speeds until she comes across a group of guards protecting a squirrel and nearly runs them over. Luckily, she manages to leap over a guard and a river in one go, leaving the squirrel completely unharmed. Oh, and the people are fine too. The one protecting the squirrel was Dame Terrell. She's unhurt, but Nanael still feels guilty and wants to go apologize when Duchess Vixen suddenly praises her for the expert jump she pulled off. I mean, it was impressive, but shouldn't she really be told off? Apparently the phrase, "royals do no wrong," really is law around these parts. If anything, the Duchess thinks Dame Terrell should be the one told off for getting in the way. But she will still tell the Emperor, of course, so I guess the scolding will come later. On the way back, Nanael catches sight of Luazia Palace for the first time, the place where she was born. It doesn't take long for the karma to come back around. Weinberg says the servants have been talking about it all day. He seems to find it quite amusing that she's becoming a troublemaker. Nanael takes her revenge by ordering Lena Maria to give him less snacks. Looks like he's started getting fat. Weinberg doesn't like the sound of that at all and starts apologizing at once. She takes the order back, but at least now she knows how to shut him up if he gets too cheeky. As it turns out, the Emperor did find out and was indeed punished, but not in the way she thought. Instead of being scolded, Alexei summoned her for a very tight hug and got rather emotional. He just doesn't want to lose his daughter again. Like any good father, he gets scared when she takes risks. I guess she'll have to be more careful riding Chrissy in the future. Fortunately, her father didn't keep her for too long since she has an appointment today with her new friends. Well, they're not really friends. Ever since her birthday banquet, Alexei was swamped with requests from nobles, hoping to get their daughters close with the new princess. So they ended up scheduling a tea party once a week to hang out with these prospective friends. The whole thing turned out to be less exciting than she thought. Why would Nanael get along with random noble girls anyway? She's already lived a lifetime. She has literally nothing in common with a bunch of preteens. At least her brothers are joining the festivities, so it won't get too boring. Aiden compliments her outfit today, while Sergi can't wait to talk about all the trouble she caused while horse riding this morning. It's also a relief that her guests today have very clear motives, and aren't likely to cause a fight with each other. Andrea of House Bassett only has eyes for Aiden, so she just spends all her time flirting with him. Catherine of House Eigner is obsessed with her bodyguard Ferdinand, so she's just going to spend the whole time trying to get him to join in. And the last one, Lisbeth of House Blunay, has a crush on Sergi. How predictable. So really, none of these girls have any interest in Nanael. They just want to use her to get closer to their crushes. It would be cute if it wasn't kind of sad for the princess. At least her brothers pay her attention. Actually, Sergi is so desperate for her attention that he completely ignores Lisbeth, declining her invitation to a party and begging for his sister's forgiveness. Wow, she's turned this playboy into a protective big brother type all in just a few weeks. Nanael tries to play the peacemaker by asking him to reconsider Lisbeth's invitation, but he won't budge. Then, out of nowhere, the young lady loses her temper on Nanael, of all people. For some reason, she blames her for distracting Sergi and making him refuse. Oh boy, that's one serious case of delusion, as if attacking his precious baby sister is going to get her back in his good graces. Her childish tantrum has revealed one important thing to Nanael, that this girl looks down on the imperial family, and by extension, the emperor's authority, which means it's time to teach her a lesson. Begrudgingly, Lisbeth sits down as she's told to. Nanael starts asking her about Sergi, what it is she likes about him, and Liz can't really answer. It kind of seems like she doesn't have such a big crush on him as it seems. Maybe she just wants his status. Seeing that she can't even give one good reason why she has a crush on Sergi, Nanael tells her brother not to date Lisbeth. Not like he was going to anyway. That seemed to push just the right button. Finally, Liz explodes and announces that she's going to marry Sergi and become Empress. There we go. Now she's outed herself. You'd think she'd be embarrassed, but Lisbeth is so deep in her delusions that she truly thinks she's the best choice for the position. Since she comes from a good family and Sergi's personality is keeping other women away, she sees herself as the best option. There's just one teeny thing she forgot about: how Sergi feels. Not that he was super interested in the first place, but after seeing her true colors, he says he'd rather stay single for his entire life rather than marry Lisbeth. And who can blame him? Having proved her point, Nanael tries to de-escalate the situation. They're only kids after all. No one needs to be punished for an overinflated ego. But then Lisbeth really goes over the line, interrupting the princess and looking down on her. She doesn't think Nanael has the right to act all lofty after spending her whole life living with filthy commoners. Yep, that's gonna get her kicked out for sure. Liz doesn't back down, and makes it clear that she doesn't respect their family one bit. So Nanael pulls out her most powerful card, the "My Daddy is the Emperor" card. Might not sound like a lot, but this could ruin Liz's standing in society. She definitely won't be debuting anytime soon, that's for sure. Weinberg says she should tell Licht about her. He's joined a mercenary squad and has been doing very well. He's been slaying magic beasts left and right, already making a name for himself. It is kind of weird that he's now taking the same path she took in her past life. But before she has much time to think about it, Sergi bumps in, asking how they should tell their father about the tea party incident. Nanael still thinks he's turned down Lisbeth's invitation because he was paying too much attention to his little sister. But as Aiden explains, it's not that simple. Although Sergi has a reputation as a womanizer, he's not as bad as he looks. He does invite a lot of different women to his chambers, but they don't actually do anything, if you catch my drift. This is all news to Nanael, and it is a bit strange. The only way she can make sense of it is by assuming her brother is impotent, which, as you can imagine, only makes him angrier. Apparently, the girls he invites over are just friends. Friends who spend the night talking and somehow end up sharing a bed. There's a perfectly good reason for that, says Sergi, but he doesn't seem willing to disclose it. How bizarre. Things are a bit awkward as the three siblings head to dinner, but Nanael decides to let it slide. She also decides not to let Sergi tell the Emperor about what happened with Lisbeth. But it turns out he already knows. And he's only too eager to punish the Blunay family on her behalf. In the end, she tells him every detail of the tea party from start to finish. It would have been hard not to, with Aiden and Sergi chiming in every few seconds. At least the Emperor agreed to deal with the matter quietly. The next day, Nanael is taking a ride in the carriage when she asks the driver to stop outside the Louisa Palace so she can take a walk and clear her head. Sir Scarlice is too concerned for her safety to let her wander very far, so they start talking instead. She takes her knight by surprise, asking him about her mother, the late Empress Eleanor. He never saw her in person before her death, since he would have been too young to visit the palace at the time. He didn't hear much about her from Sergi or Aiden either. Apparently, her poor health meant that she couldn't spend much time with him. Kinda seems like the boys didn't have the best relationship with her, but it's hard to tell from all these bits and pieces of information. Poor Nanael just wants to know what kind of woman her mother was. I guess she'll have to find someone she trusts, someone who won't hide anything from her, but that's easier said than done. The next day, she catches Sergi on a carriage ride and decides to ask him. He's a little sleepy to start with, but the moment she mentions their mother, he sits bolt upright. He says the same thing Ferdinand did, that she was severely ill and they didn't really get to spend time with her. Especially because Chancellor Dominique, their uncle, was very protective and didn't let the boys even see her when they came to visit her palace. He doesn't remember the details too clearly, but he got the impression that their mother was incredibly anxious. Seems like her illness wasn't the only thing that kept her secluded. Seeing her curiosity, Sergi offers to take her to Louisa Palace, the former Empress's palace, after breakfast. Nanael is a little nervous, but she wants to see her mother's portraits and all the things she left behind. The palace seems to have been well maintained since her death. Even Sergi is curious to see inside. Sir Scarlice insists on accompanying them, but he doesn't know much more than they do about the palace's upkeep. They're all excited to explore the inside, but when they reach the door, it's locked. All the locks in the imperial palaces are connected to an ether device, which means the Emperor will know at once if they try to break in. But that gives Nanael an idea. She can just use her powers to disconnect the lock. It works after just one try, but she doesn't want to raise any suspicion, so she basically just gaslights Sergi and says he wasn't pulling hard enough. Nice. The interior is clean but dark, so they use Sergi's ether to turn on the lights. Nanael senses some ether traces to the right, so she heads down the corridor with her brother and bodyguard in tow. Strangely, every room they enter is empty. The palace was built by the third emperor, who was famous for having a lot of concubines. It gets them talking about love and how difficult it is to trust someone as a companion, let alone a lover. It's kind of an intense conversation for a bunch of teenagers, and Nanael is surprised to hear how sincerely her brother speaks about heartbreak. Looks like Sergi might be more of a romantic than we thought. Or at least, he was. They finally arrive at the last room on the corridor, where the traces of ether are much stronger than elsewhere. Since this might be their mother's room and a very personal location for their family, they make Ferdinand wait outside. Like the other rooms, this one has very little furniture, but it does have a large painting of the late Empress. She looks a lot like Nanael. Another portrait from when she was a teenager makes them look like twins. Sergi is clearly appreciating the walk down memory lane and feels very protective about his mother. He jokes that she'll be just as beautiful when she's older and warns Nanael to be wary of guys when she makes her debut. Yeah, as if she'd let any of them get close. He even makes her promise to tell Aiden or him as soon as someone confesses feelings for her. He really is the stereotypical protective brother, but I kinda think it's sweet. Anyone else? Just me? She ends up leaving Sergi to check out the most suspicious room on his own. Her and Ferdinand make it barely 3 steps from the door when they hear the prince screaming for his life. Nanael is terrified that she just sent him to his death. But when they find Sergi, he's just trapped under a wardrobe. How did he even... Never mind, that's not important right now. What is important is the box that Sergi's holding, surrounded by glowing swirls of ether. He thinks it contains their mother's valuables, but it doesn't look like there's a way to open it. Not without magic, at least. After seeing how thoroughly it's protected, Nanael has second thoughts about opening it and decides it's time to head home. I have a feeling that won't be the last we see of that mysterious box. On the ride back to her own palace, Nanael tries to get some information on her brother out of Sir Scarlice. From everything she's gathered, it seems like he used to be a driven, talented swordsman and a stand-up example of a prince. Until about 3 years ago. She has all kinds of guesses, but her guard won't give anything away. Maybe it's more serious than just a heartbreak. All he's willing to say is that Sergi did love someone once, someone who is no longer by his side, just the same way her father, the Emperor, loved Empress Eleanor, who is no longer with him. Ferdinand clearly knows more than he's letting on, but he asks Nanael not to go looking for answers. They might cause more hurt than they're worth. Even Prince Aiden doesn't push Sergi or their father about their past. Things have only gotten better since she arrived. Ferdinand is just asking her not to disturb that fragile peace. Not yet, at least. For the first time, Nanael sees her knight in a different light. He cares deeply for the imperial family and clearly wants to protect them from emotional pain as well as physical. Maybe he's not the same man she met in her past life after all. Nanael takes his advice and thanks him for being so loyal to the Empire. A week after their escapades in the Louisa Palace, Aiden meets with one of his personal knights to find out why Sergi's been having trouble sleeping again. It turns out that all of Sergi's problems did indeed come from a heartbreak. A heavy one that almost made him take his life. Though his insomnia started from a young age, it got worse after that. It was actually Aiden who started introducing him to different women, and though he never developed feelings for another, he got used to having a companion to help him sleep. The knight tells him that no one has entered his chambers for the last week, since the day before he broke into the Louisa Palace. He usually gets depressed around the anniversary of the breakup, but there's still a month left until then. What could be getting him down this time? A knight appears to interrupt, summoning him to a family meeting with the Emperor. Looks like he's not the only one who's been worrying about Sergi. Even Nanael has started to notice the difference in his skin and his energy these days. While they're waiting for the Emperor, Sergi and Aiden discuss the recent suppression of the spring spiders. There were a bit more than in recent years, and the usual number of troops couldn't squash them alone. They had to pull in numbers from their neighboring kingdoms. They also requested a mercenary guild unit be dispatched at once. And guess who is with them? A single mercenary who managed to behead the queen all by himself, succeeding where everyone else had failed. He even offered the prize spider eyes up to the Emperor instead of keeping them to himself. Sound familiar? It's Licht, of course. No normal mercenary would be capable of doing what he did. The princes are trying to think of a way to reward him, so Nanael suggests they knight him. Sergi likes the sound of it, but Aiden points out that a position and a title are different. Anyone can be given the role of a knight, but a title is only given to those of noble birth. That means if Licht became a knight, he wouldn't get territory or have a noble name, though he would still be treated like one. Kind of like a weird third category in between noble and commoner. For that reason, the officials tend to reject any attempt to knight a commoner. They just don't like the social hierarchies being blurred. Aiden doesn't like the idea of riling up the nobles any more than they already are. He suggests giving him something symbolic, like a badge, but Sergi says that's stupid. Nanael suggests a sword, a really good one with the imperial crest engraved on it. They all agree that would be a perfect gift, and decide to suggest it to their father at dinner time. But before they can even bring it up, the Emperor announces a family party. For some reason, this really gets Sergi worked up. He even pulls the tablecloth and all the food off the table. Wait, why is he so upset? What's so triggering about a family party? Sergi immediately regrets his actions, clearly terrified of angering his father. He starts suggesting all these wild punishments, but the Emperor takes them all by surprise and apologizes. He admits that he hasn't been the best father to any of them up until this point, and wants to make up for it. Well, that was unexpected. As we already know, Sergi doesn't handle the mushy stuff well, and assures the Emperor that he's always done his best as their father. He probably didn't need to yell it, though. It's kind of a sweet moment, and the perfect way to guilt-trip Sergi into accepting the family party idea. Actually, this is all just a big ploy to give the boys a proper birthday party. They've never actually had one, you see. Since their birthday was so close to their father's, they've always just celebrated together. The Emperor has always felt bad about that, so he's decided to make things right. This year, the social season will be kicked off by their coming-of-age ceremony, and from now on, they'll always celebrate their birthdays on the actual date. Aww. The family party will be a closed event with the four of them, scheduled on the twins' actual birthday. But they're going to make it a family event and give presents to everyone, kind of like a Secret Santa. Nanael is excited about the idea of actually giving a gift for the first time rather than receiving them, and she's pulled Sergi's name. Honestly, she is still struggling with Sir Scarlice's advice to not bring up the past. It's only getting more difficult now that Sergi's sleeping difficulties are becoming more transparent. But she knows from her own past how painful it can be to confront those kinds of memories. So she vows to do whatever it takes to protect her brothers, and for that, she needs Weinberg. After all, we still have no idea who is after the princes. So she asks Weinberg to act as a spy, bringing her any information from around the palace, no matter how small. Really, she needs Licht's help too, so they journey to a port in the City of Freedom to meet him. He seems very pleased that she's come to ask his help, and even goes so far as to kiss her cloak. Great, so he's just as creepy as the last time we saw him. Apparently, Weinberg can't go more than a few minutes without something to snack on, so they head to a night market to find some treats and a quiet place to talk. Weinberg forces them to get him some pastries, but Nanael suddenly realizes she didn't bring any cash. Duh, she's a princess. What would she be carrying money for? This is when Licht comes in handy. Not only is he wealthy, but he's so intimidating that everyone just shuts up and follows his orders. Now their ancient guardian is satisfied, they head to a familiar spot in the park that Nanael used to visit in her past life. As per usual, he takes every opportunity to dish out cheesy lines, unable to keep his feelings under control. When Nanael says she's happy to be back with him, his heart pretty much stops altogether. Damn, this boy is down bad! Finally, they reach a pavilion where they can sit down and share information. Nanael was hoping to use Lick's knowledge of the past to gain a better idea of their enemies, and specifically anyone who might have plans to harm Sergi and Aiden. He doesn't have much info on Count Blanue, but he does remember an intriguing detail about the prince's assassination. Apparently, Aiden and Sergi didn't die at the same time. In fact, there was a whole 5 years between them. Sergi was the one to pass first. Licht seems hesitant to tell her the details, but Nanael presses him. She may look like a little girl, but we all know she's tougher than that. Licht finally spills the beans on Sergi's major heartbreak. It turns out the girl wasn't just his girlfriend, but his fiancée, Lady Agathe from the house of Marquise Poitiers. They were only teenagers when they got engaged, and Lady Agathe was 3 years older than Sergi. I guess he wasn't joking when he said he liked older girls. As far as the records claim, Agathe passed away of a terminal illness about 3 years ago. It was common knowledge that Sergi struggled with her loss, and in the end, he took his own life. Oh, that's horrible! Our poor Sergi! At least that's not going to happen in our timeline, not with Nanael around. As they're walking back through the park, she asks Licht about the nobles responsible for Aiden's death, since he mentioned they were all executed. Licht offers to take care of them for her, since it would be much easier for him than for a princess. Someone's forgotten who the true Knight of the Four Seasons is. Our girl could kill a man with a pen if she wanted to. She asks him to write up a list of names and pass them on through Weinberg. She also asks him to decide what he'd like as a reward for all this. Just as they're parting ways, a little boy named Burdick comes running up to them. She recognizes him from her past life, where he joined the same mercenary guild, following in her footsteps. Looks like this time he's following Licht. He gets quite the shock when his idol raises his sword, warning him never to speak of what and who he saw today. Poor Burdick goes running off into the night while the princess scolds her knight for being so cruel to him. But all becomes clear when he reveals that he's joined exactly the same mercenary guild that she did. If they treat him the way they treated Nanael in her past life, she won't be able to forgive herself. Luckily, that doesn't seem to be the case. Sivan, the leader of the guild, is just as horrible as Nanael remembers, but he also wants to keep Licht by their side because of the fame and wealth he brings to the guild. Relieved, the princess tells him to come and find her after he's taken care of the guild members. If he accomplishes that and succeeds at the harvest tournament, then he really might become her escort knight. Although, I don't know if Ferdinand will give up the spot so easily. When she gets back to the palace, Nanael has a rough night. The news that Sergi went through so much pain and suffering to take his own life has really affected her. Understandably. Not only is she devastated about how much her brother has suffered, but she's also worried. She can protect him from poison and assassins and scheming nobles, but can she protect him from herself? What if the pain becomes too much? The thoughts are so overwhelming that she starts to spiral, clearly panicking. I guess her dad's spider senses were tingling because he shows up in her room a few minutes later. What perfect timing! Just having him there calms her down. The Emperor is clearly worried about her and asks if he could be of any comfort. Nanael can't think of how to explain it to him, and the tears just won't stop. So he pulls her into a hug instead, assuming she had some terrible nightmare that was so vivid it felt like it would become reality. Well, he's not wrong, actually. He tells her to let it all out, promising to stay by her side until she's not scared anymore. You know, I know we've all been a little suspicious of him in the past, but Emperor Alexei is a really good dad. At least he's trying to be. Her dad ends up staying the whole night by her side and cancels everything on his schedule the next day. That's A+ parenting right there. Nanael is a little embarrassed by how much she cried, but she doesn't dwell on it. Mainly because Lick's list of noble traitors just arrived, and there's a heck of a lot of names. More than 50. As always, he chose something cliché and romantic for his reward, asking that she send him a flower every day. Doesn't matter what kind, so long as it's been near her. She sends the first one right away with Weinberg and heads to his lair to wait for his return. They decided to strategize here since it's pretty much the safest place in any timeline to discuss a plan. And it's spacious enough to swing a sword around. Even princesses need practice, you know. As we've already been told, the Equilibrium sword can't actually take human life since it was designed to keep balance in the universe. But it can't hurt to brush up on her skills. While she's readjusting to the feeling of a sword in her hands, she sends Weinberg with the list of names and tasks him with finding out where they live. After all, plotting a royal assassination takes some time. They might already be conspiring on the prince's downfall. It's time for Nanael to come out of hiding and stop them in their tracks. A few days later, Nanael is walking down the stairs to join Aiden for a family dinner as usual. Sergi's absence is tangible. Since the 5th month began, he's been skipping meals left and right, avoiding any occasion where he has to be in public. Aiden promises everything will be alright once the month is over. He hasn't told her any of Sergi's backstory, and keeps insisting that he's fine. But all these secrets are starting to weigh on Nanael, who's hurt that her family are hiding so much from her. Frustrated, she storms back up the stairs, determined to go and see Sergi for herself. Aiden tries to stop her, but Nanael has had enough. When she reaches the door, Ferdinand stops her, begging her to remember the advice he gave her a while back. Can't he tell by the look on her face? She is not about to change her mind now. In fact, she's so offended that her own knight would obstruct her that she orders him to take a week off and reflect on his actions. Yikes, our girl means business. After seeing that, Aiden gives in. He agrees to take her inside Sergi's room, but only on the condition that she doesn't turn away no matter what she sees. Oh gosh, here we go. The room is even more somber than she expects. Sergi is at one end of it, sitting on his bed in a defeated slump. He doesn't even register their arrival. But stranger than his weary state is the room itself. There's no furniture, not even curtains, and the windows have been sealed shut with ether. I think we can all guess what that's for. Finally, Aiden explains what happened with Sergi, why he's like this, how difficult things have been for him, and how severe his mental health problems become every year during the 5th month. Sergi himself seems to be in a trance, not really asleep or awake. But as soon as he hears Nanael's voice, he snaps to attention. His first reaction is to be embarrassed. He doesn't want his baby sister seeing him like this. But his worries disappear when she starts to cry. At first, he thinks something might have happened while he was gone, but she decides to tell him the truth instead. Well, sort of. She tells them the story of her other life, how the princes died, how lonely and bitter the emperor became, and how, in the end, she also lost the will to live. She says it was all a dream, a horrible dream so strong that it felt real. Poor Aiden is horrified, but Sergi just looks guilty. Nanael drops to her knees and begs him not to leave them like he did in the dream. I guess he didn't realize how much his little sister cared for him since they spend all their time arguing. He's touched and even more surprised when she insists on sleeping in his room that night. Nanael's stubbornness seems to have finally got through to him. It's like he truly didn't realize that his family would be devastated to lose him until today. Gosh, I know he's hurting and all, but this guy really is an idiot. How could he not realize how much they love him? For the first time in a long time, Sergi manages a smile. Things in the Imperial Palace start to perk up a bit after that. Nanael sticks to her promise, sending new flowers to lick each day, and gets a status report from Weinberg about the noble families who plotted against Aiden. To her surprise, they've all fallen to ruin already. Apparently, the Imperial Knights conducted a huge series of raids on the noble territories earlier this year, and all were imprisoned by the Emperor for being fake nobles? Apparently, you need to have lineage certificates to prove your noble heritage, but none of them could provide any. That in itself is kind of crazy, but what's even weirder is how neatly all this has been wrapped up. That definitely didn't happen in her past life, so what's different this time around? Could this really all just be a domino effect from Nanael returning to the palace? It seems too good to be true if you ask me. Weinberg also found out that Count Blanue, Lisbeth's father, has had his territory temporarily stripped and is under investigation. The residents of Bluebell, the village she grew up in, have also been charged with hiding the princess and have just had a hearing. The Emperor sure's been busy. They were sentenced to hard labor for the rest of their lives, which is pretty much a death sentence in itself. Meanwhile, on the other side of the palace, Chancellor Dominic is giving a similar report to the Emperor, asking how he knew all those noble families were fake. The Emperor looks tired and jokes that he had a divine revelation. Wait, seriously? Is this why he told Nanael that he'd also had a scary dream that felt like it would become reality? We get to see a flash from the previous timeline where Alexei had immense pressure put on him to find a new Empress and make another heir. He had no interest in falling in love again, not after Eleanor, and he was so bitter after losing his children that he refused to entertain the idea. Poor guy, he ended up so alone and angry. Even Chancellor Dominic, Eleanor's own brother, encouraged him to find a new Empress and let go of Eleanor's memory. But the Emperor wouldn't hear a word. He actually wanted the Marahart Empire to end, or at least he didn't care about his bloodline continuing. The only thing he felt responsible for was making sure the seasonal beast didn't cause too much trouble for the people he left behind. The only way to permanently take care of that problem was to hire the famous mercenary. a warrior known as the Grim Reaper, to defeat the Demon King once and for all. You guys don't need me to tell you who that is. The Emperor wanted to bestow titles and lands upon this warrior and asked for their name. As we all know, Nanael didn't have a name in her past life, though she was known by many titles. One she probably wasn't aware of was Leandinas, a name which means brilliant sword, and was given to her by none other than Sir Scarlice. Although Nanael thought he was neglectful of her during her training to become a knight, it turns out it was actually Ferdinand who paid for all her training and materials and gave her his full support. But the other trainees took this as favoritism and started harassing her instead. Not wanting to make it any worse, Sir Scarlice never intervened, and that's why Nanael had a bad image of him from her past life. Even after she quit, he disqualified the trainees that had bullied her. It's crazy how much Nanael didn't know about her own life. When Nanael was eventually summoned to the Imperial Palace, the Emperor immediately noticed the similarities between her and her mother, despite all the scarring. He actually thought it was a trick at first. Maybe someone was trying to get him to take an interest in her by making her look like his former wife. Which would be insanely messed up if that was true. But when he saw her eyes, the resemblance was undeniable. He immediately had Dominic check her ether, wanting to confirm his suspicions. They managed to obtain some blood from her, and 1 month later, they finally conducted the test and discovered that the famous warrior was, in fact, the long-lost princess. Alexei rode straight to the residence where she was staying and found a swirl of ether, almost like a storm. It led him to the cave with Weinberg in his true form at the exact moment that Nanael turned back time. The next second he was back at his desk almost 2 decades earlier, as if none of it ever happened. Somehow, he retained all his memories and realized he'd been given a second chance to be a better father, to protect his children, and to find his daughter. No way! This whole time the Emperor knew the truth? I can't believe it! Back in the present, Alexei is discussing his next plan with Chancellor Dominic when Sergi barges in, looking much better. In fact, it looks like he's done a total 180. He's even asking to participate in the suppression of the summer beasts. He volunteers to participate in all the future suppressions too, something he hasn't bothered doing for the last 3 years. Actually, he hasn't bothered picking up a sword in the last 3 years either. As his father points out, he'll need a new swordsmanship teacher for a little refresher. And he's true to his word. A few months later, and Sergi is on the battlefield himself, fighting off a giant demonic snake. It's more of a challenge than he expected, though, and nearly cost him his life. Fortunately, Licht is on the scene, as he always is, in time to save the prince's life. He's known as Imbolc these days, and it seems to be getting more skilled by the month. Once he's taken care of the snake, he comes over to formally introduce himself to Sergi, who notices a small flower pinned to his cloak. Kind of unusual for a mercenary, wouldn't you say? As if that wasn't strange enough, he refuses the prince's offer of a reward and gives him a gem instead. It's a blood crystal from that snake, which is incredibly powerful at healing illness or injury in an instant. Sergi and his men are shocked, but grateful. He uses the crystal to instantly heal himself and gets much friendlier with Licht after that. They head off to fight the rest of the beasts together and discuss Licht's career path, including how he wants to become a knight. Sergi offers to put in a good word for him with the Emperor, but Licht refuses. Of course he does. He's got a flair for the dramatic, this guy. I bet he wants to do everything alone just so it's even more impressive to Nanael. Despite acting a little pretentious, he earns Sergi's respect for his skills and dedication. I didn't think about it before, but these two could actually be pretty good friends. When Sergi returns to the palace, he's more fired up and energetic than his family have seen him in weeks. Nanael, for one, is glad to see him more positive and grateful that Licht made an impact. The long-awaited family party is coming up soon, which means everyone is thinking about presents and how to use their very strict budget. The day itself arrives a few days later. Nanael is pretty happy with her gift, as is Sergi, who heads over to the main palace with her. The actual party is pretty low-key, for the imperial family, that is. The Emperor starts with a birthday toast for his 2 sons and gives them their first glass of wine. Or what he thinks is their first glass of wine. It doesn't take a genius to guess that Sergi's had his fair share of alcohol before today. The Emperor also offers Nanael a drink, which comes as a shock to the boys. They don't realize their sister isn't really a 13-year-old girl. She's had a drink or 2 in her time as well. After a big meal, it's finally time for the presents. Nanael goes first, receiving a hastily drawn picture from Sergi, which acts as a wish coupon for anything she wants. That could be more useful than it looks. Aiden did the same thing, making promise tokens to grant any wish according to a specific set of instructions. Trust Aiden to be so thorough. He receives a teleportation ring from his father with special spell crystals that will take him out of danger and straight to his father's side. That's a nice idea. There's no way he kept within the budget, though. The last gift to be opened is the Emperor's himself, which is the one Nanael prepared. It's not much, just a flower in a vase. Actually, it's more like a weed, so it doesn't have a name. But it's just as beautiful as a rose, so the Emperor decides to give it a proper name and a meeting at the next Imperial Assembly. He doesn't joke around when it comes to his daughter. Along with a gift, they were also told to prepare some kind of presentation. Nanael performs a piece on the violin, but the mood changes when Emperor Alexei gets up, bringing a crystal ball into the room. He addresses the princes, asking if they truly understand the gift they inherited from him, the talent of Ovyulia. As per usual, Sergi doesn't have a clue, but Aiden does. The talent they possess is the ability to embed Athanas into an object. It's basically a formula for creating ether tools. Any ordinary object can be imbued with ether and are known as artifacts. If an artifact is embedded with particularly strong ether, it becomes nearly permanent and is known as a Nova artifact. With me so far? Only those with near-genius talent can make Nova artifacts. It's not just something you can practice. As if to prove his insane abilities, the Emperor makes one for them right then and there. It's a bit gross since it uses his blood to complete the process, but in the end, the crystal ball is filled with the Emperor's beautiful swirling ether pattern. Is anyone else wondering what it actually does, though? Sure, it looks pretty, but is that all? Anyway, the two princes are due to begin studying Athanas and the Ovyulia talent from tomorrow. As if all that wasn't enough for one day, there's then a second round of gift-giving where Nanael receives a key to Aiden's personal library and gives her personalized gift for Sergi. He's hella excited that she picked him in the first place, but it takes a while for him to get to the actual present under all that wrapping paper. But once he hits the last layer, he guesses instantly, and from the look on his face, he's pleased. Very pleased. It's a portrait of Nanael and a very grumpy-looking Weinberg. She got the idea from when they were in the Louisa Palace looking at portraits of their mother. Sergi couldn't seem to take his eyes off them, so she decided to give him one of herself too. Maybe it can give him strength in his darker hours, remind him of the family who love and support him. Though she's a little embarrassed, it's an obvious success. Even her brother and father are jealous. Next is Sergi's turn to give to the Emperor. He managed to find a crystal from the blood of the summer snakes, harvested himself during the battle with Lit. Once all the presents giving is wrapped up, the Emperor reminds Sergi that he still has to give a presentation, as agreed in the rules. Without any warning, he gets up and announces to the whole room that he's getting engaged. What? When did that happen? This man was in the darkest time of his life just weeks ago. How could he already be moving on to marriage? My head is spinning. A short while later, the nobles of the Marahart Empire are gathered for the coming-of-age ceremony for Princes Aiden and Sergi. There are whispers that the Emperor will use the occasion to announce something very important. Hopefully that means we'll find out who this lucky lady is, and how the heck Sergi came to meet her. But the nobles think it has something to do with their new Princess Nanael. Rumors have been swirling ever since the incident with Count Blenue, and how the Emperor exposed so many noble families to be fraudulent. It's funny how quickly people go from kissing your boots to cursing your name. While Nanael is listening in on their gossip, her brothers are more concerned about her first social appearance. She'll be escorted by the Emperor, which rubbed them both the wrong way. But Alexei is taking good care of her as always, warning her not to overdo herself and head back to her palace whenever she wants. I wish my social events worked like that. The Imperial family are stationed kind of awkwardly above everyone, watching from a balcony above the ballroom. White flowers mark out this year's debutantes, though there's less than usual because of all those fake nobles being wiped out. Lady Lisbeth is also notably missing. The boys explain that since her house is still under suspicion and has their titles temporarily suspended, it would have been odd for her to debut. Even if that wasn't the case, apparently she failed the interview day. In order to debut, noble kids have to present themselves to the Emperor and kiss his mace to show their loyalty. Obviously, there are a lot of rules about how to act in the presence of His Majesty, so I guess she failed one of them. Looks like the Emperor is really making an example of their family, huh? After the first dance is over, the Emperor stops the party and summons Marquess Poitiers, the father of Sergi's ex-fiancée. Everyone believes him to no longer have a relationship with the Imperial family after losing his daughter, so this comes as quite the surprise. But it's not half as shocking as what he says next. Sergi is going ahead with the marriage. That's right, he's going to marry a dead girl. It's actually kind of touching. Even though Agatha is long gone, Sergi wants to keep the promise he made to marry her and stay her husband, at least on paper, until the end of his days. Oh, he's such a romantic at heart. The Marquess points out that could cause some problems, mainly with the chain of succession. Since Sergi is the first prince, he needs an heir to succeed him, and he can't have an heir if he doesn't marry someone, well, living. That's when the second shock of the evening arrives. Sergi is giving up his claim to the throne, completely. He swears before everyone in the ballroom to completely step back from any ambitions to become emperor and relinquishes his right to be crown prince. Wow, that's a big deal. But I think we all know it's the right thing. I mean, I love Sergi, but I think Aiden would be far better at the job. Although, Nanael would be pretty good too. After the coming-of-age ball, there was a lot less tension in the Imperial Palace. Since Sergi is no longer a crown prince, he's decided to move to the Arquetta Palace with Nanael. Soon after, Aiden was formally crowned prince. As you can imagine, the nobles were a little shocked by how quickly things have moved. But the coronation went perfectly. Finally, it feels like things are falling into place the way they were meant to be. Sergi's passion for swordsmanship has been rekindled, and he's started taking his future more seriously, moving on from the pain of his past. He was legally married the day after his brother's coronation, and also had his name cleared from those womanizing allegations by all the women who were helping him sleep. Overall, his reputation has improved dramatically, and now he's happier than ever, ready to spend the rest of his days bothering his little sister. He brings up the topic of the Harvest Festival, which is fast approaching, and suggests the two of them sneak out to enjoy the festivities. Specifically, he wants to go out 2 days after the actual Harvest Festival day, which is the day Nanael was planning to watch Licht perform in the tournament. Funnily enough, that's exactly what Sergi had in mind. Looks like someone's got a bit of a boy crush on his fellow comrade. After that, she has no reason to refuse. But when the day itself rolls around, their plans to sneak away are foiled by Aiden. Who else? He also ran into Sir Scarlice, so now their little escape team has doubled in size. Fortunately, he doesn't want to stop them. He just doesn't want to be left out. Plus, he brought some artifacts that might be useful. 3 rings that can change their appearance, just enough for the Imperial family to remain unrecognizable for 12 hours. Once their appearances are changed, they slip into some disguises and head out via carriage. It ends up being a good thing they brought Ferdinand along. Since he watches the tournament every year, he knows all the best places to sit, and can give them a play-by-play on each of the contestants. But Nanael isn't paying much attention to him. She can feel Licht's aura from behind the massive arena doors, and even makes a comment to Weinberg about how beautiful it is. What? Where did that come from? Weinberg is just as surprised as we are, and asks if she's fallen in love with her time-traveling companion. Nanael gets all flustered. In her past life, there probably wasn't time for love and beauty in between all the fighting for her life and defeating demon kings. So now she really feels like a 13-year-old when it comes to matters of the heart, trying to figure out what beauty really means and how being attracted can be different from falling in love. Okay, can we pump the brakes a bit, please? Am I the only one who's a little creeped out by this? I know she's not actually 13, but it's still kind of weird for our little princess to be questioning her feelings for a fully grown man. At last, the announcer emerges and kicks off the start of the Harvest Festival tournament. Licht is behind the doors, his heart racing in his chest. He's really touched that Nanael came all this way to keep her promise, but the other contestants mistake it for nerves and think he must be an amateur. They even joke that he's using a longsword to copy Imbolc, which is Licht's knightly nickname in case you forgot. These guys have no idea who they're messing with. He ignores all their taunts and bribes until one of them touches the flower given to him by the princess. No way he's gonna let that slide. In an instant, the men are on the ground, his ether grabbing them by the throats. They're even more horrified when they call out for Imbolc and Licht answers, promising to finish the lesson he started after the tournament. Yikes, he went from flustered lover boy to Knight of Darkness in just a few seconds. As expected, Imbolc is just as popular as he is talented and keeps winning his rounds at the speed of light. The princes are just as impressed. Even their escort knights admit they couldn't hold a candle to Licht. Look at that smile on Nanael's face. She's so proud. I guess she must be into him after all. Weinberg is proud too, since he is basically his adoptive father. The only person who has a negative reaction is Ferdinand, who seems a little taken aback. But when she asks what he thought of his performance, Sir Scarlice says it was beautiful. Uh-oh, that's +1 for the Boy Crush fan club. The only reason he looks so disappointed is because he knew one of Licht's opponents, the very one who had taunted him in the waiting room. Ferdinand actually sponsored him for a while, but recently cut him off after his ego got too big and he started causing trouble. Yep, that sounds about right. Ferdinand is just sad that he helped someone like that on the path to becoming so corrupt. But he's soon distracted when the final round is announced. This match is Licht versus someone hilariously named Leonardo DiCaprio. No, I'm not kidding. The MC takes a moment to interview both of the contestants before they begin and asks Licht why he's wearing a marigold over his cloak. It's the flower Nanael sent him, of course, but he doesn't say anything and just smiles fondly at it. For some reason, that makes the ladies go crazy, but since he's being so secretive, they move on to a tournament tradition. One person is picked out of the entire stadium to give their handkerchief to the person they're rooting for. Out of everyone in that giant arena, Nanael is the girl who gets picked. Because, of course she is. Only, she can't give her handkerchief since it has the royal crest on it. So she unties the ribbon around her neck and floats it down to him. Look at that boy, he's never been so happy in his life. I think this is like the 4th time we've seen him smile ever. His spirits renewed, he ties her ribbon around the handle of his sword and proceeds to the final match. Poor Leonardo looks like he already knows he's gonna lose, but he does his best anyway. The match is over in seconds, and Licht is officially crowned champion to the delight of the tournament audience. Nanael, of course, is the happiest of them all, and swears to help Licht go through every step he'll need to take on the path to becoming a knight. She doesn't want him to suffer the same hardships she had herself. This time, things will be different. Unfortunately, his treatment has already started. While giving his details as champion of the tournament, the administrator makes fun of him for not knowing how to write, which is kind of ridiculous. Obviously, Licht does know, but he's not supposed to since he's not from a noble family. Not in this timeline, anyway. He snatches back the document and starts writing confidently, using his real name. But thinking of his family takes him back to the painful memories of his past, and he changes his mind. He crosses it all out and writes Licht instead, which, if you didn't know, means light, the total opposite of the name his parents gave him. The administrator asks for a second name so they can use it when he's sergeant. Since he's meant to be a commoner without one, he just takes Imbolc, solidifying the new identity he chose in this life and taking the first steps to becoming a true knight. Meanwhile, Emperor Alexei is taking a good look at Licht's file, trying to figure him out. He never heard of a Licht Imbolc in his past life, and it makes him wonder, is this man the chosen warrior? Will he be the one to defeat the Demon King Drog, taking on Nanael's destiny in this timeline? Alexei is more observant than we give him credit for. He knows Nanael has been slipping out in the middle of the night, and even though she didn't want to take swordsmanship lessons, she has blisters all over her hands, the kind you get from swinging a sword. He can't shake the feeling it has something to do with the Demon King. He wants to tell her the truth and ask straight up, but he can't bring himself to face the past and how he failed to find and protect her last time. All he wants is for Nanael to live in peace. If Licht is the new warrior to face the Demon Knight, then so be it. Since he can't quite trust this new knight yet, he and Aiden have come up with a plan to keep an eye on him. Though we don't get to find out what it is yet. Nanael is told by Aiden that Licht will be sent to the border regions to carry out his sergeant training. The princes are also heading off for the suppression of the latest seasonal beasts. Sergi promises they'll be back within a few days, definitely before her birthday at least. But that gets Nanael thinking. Since Licht isn't a mercenary anymore, he won't be helping out with the suppression expeditions. Will Aiden and Sergi be able to handle the beasts on their own? She's also worried about how far Licht is from the capital. Our girl is definitely head over heels. She's midway through a daydream about him becoming her escort knight when Sergi pulls her back to reality. Apparently, the princes had a conversation about Imbolc just yesterday. To her relief, it looks like Sergi has pulled a few strings. On Ferdinand's recommendation, he's trying to ensure that Licht spends as little time as possible working as a sergeant, and can be exempt from the usual stages so he can come back to the capital as a knight straight away. Which is great news for Nanael, even if it is kind of an abuse of power. But Sergi clearly believes in his talent and thinks he can learn on the job. He already has the rest of the skills required. Wouldn't it be silly to waste his time learning something he already knows? Nanael is very worried about all this, since it's obviously nepotism, and could give Licht a bad rep. Fortunately, Aiden stepped in and compromised. Licht won't be bumped up straight away, but he will be brought closer to the capital. And if he does well as a sergeant, they will consider letting him skip the other stages. He's always the voice of reason. That's why he's the better crown prince, if you ask me. Nanael is much happier with this arrangement. She just hopes he doesn't have the same experience as a sergeant that she did. Hearing about all the costs and materials he'll need to complete training takes her by surprise. She doesn't remember having to do any of that when she was in training. The wheels are finally turning in her head. All this time, she never considered that someone might have been sponsoring her in her past life. Just wait until she figures out it was Sir Scarlice. His name pops up briefly in her head, but she doesn't believe it. Why would a man who paid for all her training costs ignore her when she was being bullied? Oh, Nanael, she still has so much to learn. While she's busy worrying about him, Licht has just arrived at the barracks, where he'll be training as a sergeant for the next few weeks. Everything seems to be going well. He has a tent all to himself, and he's made a good first impression with his drill sergeant. There's just one thing out of place. Noticing something off with the sheets, he pulls the blanket back to reveal shards of glass scattered all across his bed. Oh gosh, did Nanael have to go through this as well? She's the first person he thinks of when he sees it, and decides this boot camp will be the perfect place to take out his anger on a bunch of stuck-up noble knights in training. Well, he's not wrong about that. If his experience is anything like hers, he'll have plenty of bullies to choose from. And from the looks of things, he's already made an impressive number of enemies in such a short space of time. Licht is truly a man of many talents. This very angry man who's covered in bandages also has a debt to settle with Licht, which comes as a surprise since they've never actually met before. But as it turns out, this is the guy who left glass in his bed. Licht even manages to get him to confess in front of the other trainees, admitting that he was the one who put them there. And the reason he's covered in bandages is because this so-called low-life commoner returned the favor. He's clearly gearing up for a fight, but Licht doesn't give him the satisfaction. He says it's his own fault for not taking care of his quarters and starts walking away. Unsurprisingly, the bandage bully gets even angrier and suddenly takes a swing when Licht's back is turned. There's a thud, a moment before the dust settles, where all the trainees can see is blood. But come on, as if Licht would ever be taken down by a guy like that. Fortunately, Licht doesn't get in trouble for anything that happened with the bully. Plus, he managed to make an example of him, showing everyone else what he's made of. That doesn't mean they'll start respecting him, though. He's got a long way to go before anything like that. At the end of the first month, he heads to the admin tent to pay his fees, only to find out his training costs have been covered in full for the next 3 months. Is this Sir Scarlice getting involved again? He really is getting the full Nanael experience. Speaking of the princess, she hasn't been able to sleep much in the last week. Between Licht being stuck at boot camp and her brothers away on expedition, our girl is full of worries. Arcata Palace feels so quiet without the usual suspects running around, and especially without Weinberg. She starts staring at the vase of flowers on her desk. Without her trusty sidekick, she thought that there was no way to deliver them to him, but an idea suddenly pops up in her head. What about a secret nighttime visit? Returning to the training barracks brings back a flood of bad memories for the princess. Momentarily distracted, she panics when she hears a night patrol and bounces into the first tent she can find. Guess who it belongs to? Not only is the occupant inside, but he's awake. Somehow, she stumbles backwards and pulls them both to the ground, landing perfectly on top of him. How very convenient. Since she doesn't want to be caught, Nanael stays quietly on top of his chest until the patrol moves on. I'm sure Licht's heart is racing a mile a minute, but so is hers. He uses ether to communicate with her, trying to get her back on her feet in the least awkward way possible. There's a lot of awkward touching and blushing, but they manage it in the end. Just about. And that's it for today, guys. What did you think? As always, don't forget to like the video and comment for the next part so we know you want more. Remember to subscribe and turn on notifications for updates. See you in the next one!